Hello, today we will talk about the English, its changes and relationship with historical events over time. Just to start around, first of all, the English language belongs to the West Germanic branch of the Indo-European family of languages. The closest undoubted living relatives of the English are Scots and Frisons, where Frisons is a language spoken by approximately half a million people in the Dutch province of Friesland, in nearby areas of Germany, and only a few islands in the North Sea. The history of English language has traditionally been divided into three main periods, which is the Old English, the Middle English, and the Modern English. Over the centuries, the English language has been influenced by a number of other languages, and this has helped the English language to evolve and become what it is nowadays. In this presentation today, we will be talking about these three main periods and the historical events that helped shape the English language to what it is nowadays. First of all, we will start with the Old English period, which is from 450 AD to 11,000 AD. The Old English period, um, well, during this period of time, which is around the 5th century AD, three Germanic tribes, which were the Saxons, the Angles, and the Jutes, they came to the British Isles from various parts of northwest Germany, as well as Denmark. These tribes, they were warlike and they pushed out most of the original people living there, which were the Celtics. These Celtic-speaking inhabitants from England, they were pushed away into Scotland, Wales, and Cornwall. One of these groups migrated to the Brittany coast of France, where their descendants still speak the Celtic language of Breton today. In this small picture here, we can see how these main tribes they migrated from their ports to the British Isles and they set up there. Throughout the years, the Saxons, the Angles, and the Jutes they mixed their different Germanic dialects. This group of dialects forms what linguistics refer to the Old English or Anglo-Saxon. Just as a fun fact, the word English was in Old English, English, and that comes from the name of the Angles. The Angles were named from Engle, which is their land of origin. Before the Saxons, the language spoken in what is now England was a mixture of Latin and various Celtic languages which were spoken before the Romans came to Britain. This was around 54 through 5 BC. The Romans brought Latin to Britain, which was part of the Roman Empire for over 4,000 years. Many of the words passed from this era are those coined by Roman merchants and soldiers. These words include words such as wine, candle, held, and wall. Okay. Also, with Christianity being introduced among Anglo-Saxons by Saint Augustine, many words were brought to the Anglo-Saxon land now. Many of these words they were mainly focused or related to religious things and also to daily life, as well as during this period of time, many texts in English emerged, and they were mainly related to religious beliefs and many other things that were mostly concerned with the religion. But there was this great piece of work which was written down in this period, and it was Beowulf. This piece of literature we'll be talking about in the next slides. Okay, so continuing on, the Romans brought all of these new words that had a Latin or Greek roots, and they were introduced to the Anglo-Saxons, which they took them and they started to borrow them and become part of the Old English. The influence of the Celtic upon the Old English slight, was really slight. Okay, in fact, very few Celtic words have lived they have lived on into the English language. Many of many have taken names of places and rivers have Celtic origin. Some examples are like Kent, York, Dover, Cumberland, Avon, and Thames, just to name a few. With the arrival of St. Augustine in 597, as it was mentioned before, and the introduction of Christianity into the Saxon England, they brought more Latin words. Okay, most of these words, once again, they were constantly with the naming of a church, dignities, and ceremonies, and daily life on things. Around 858 AD, the Danes and the Norsemen, also called Vikings, they invaded the country, and English got many Norse words into the language. First, the Vikings made some incursions during this period of time, and as time went on, these incursions or invasions they become worse and worse, and many of those previous groups of land that were in the English Isles before, they got swept away by the Vikings. Okay, with this swept away of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, the Vikings set up a new kingdom, and this also helped the English language evolve and become a little bit different from what it was before the appearance of the Vikings. After several battles, the Danes and the Norsemen they continued to mix peacefully, and at some time they became undistinguishable, and many Scandinavian loanwords entered the language. Some um, some of these words that were borrowed were regarding daily and domestic routines, and also they borrow pronouns like them, they, and their. Some of the words that derive from the Norse include sky, egg, cake, skin, leg, window, husband, fellow, anger, flat, ugly, just to name a few. Several several written words have survived from the Old English period, but the most famous it is a Hieronic epic poem called Beowulf, which was mentioned before, and this is the oldest known English poem that it was written, and it is notable for its length, which is around 3,183 lines. And experts say that Beowulf was written in Britain more than 1,000 years ago. The name of the person that wrote this is still unknown. During this period of the Old English, the Celts and the Anglo-Saxons they used a alphabet which was called runes. This alphabet of runes um, it is characteristic for the angular characters that were originally developed from scratching into wood or stone. The first known written English sentence it was found in Suffolk, and it is dated from 4,000 for 450 to 480 A.D. This sentence reads, "This she-wolf is a reward to my skinmen." Okay, this is the type of alphabet that the Norse and Old English people in this period used to communicate, and this is the first dated alphabet that exists for the English language. With the arrival of the Vikings and the previous groups that invaded the English Isles, the Latin language evolved a little bit, and many new words were borrowed from both, and many of those words that we still nowadays they do have a Latin or a Greek root. Another fact about the Old English is that during Old English, the language had three genders, which were the masculine, feminine, and the neuter. Okay, um, Now, now let's go and move on to the next period, which is the Middle English period. During this English Middle period, it dates from 11,000 to 15,000 AD. Now, the Middle English period was marked significant changes in the English language because of the Norman conquest. Okay, with the conquest, many changes in grammar and the vocabulary use, they became more significant and more notable in the English language. This this conquest made a really huge impact both in the language and also in the lives of people back in the day. The Middle um, English period, it is mainly significant by this conquest. And well, after William the Conqueror, um, the Duke of Normandy invaded and conquered England in 1066 AD with his armies and became king himself. Okay, he brought his nobles who spoke French to the new government, and while the old French took over as the language of the court, administration, and culture. Latin was mostly used for written language, especially that of the church. Meanwhile, the English language, as the language of the now lower class, was considered a vulgar tongue. So, with this conquest, the many French words, the French language was brought to England, and now the the Latin words or language that was previously introduced to the British island was now being swiped away. By about 12,000, England and France had split, and English changed a lot because it was mostly being spoken instead of written for about 300 years. The use of Old English came back, but with many French words added. In this period of time, we can see that many French borrowings were added to the English language. Now, because of the Norman invasion of England, the Old English era ended as the Normans brought French politics, fashion, architecture, and most importantly, the language. The Normans also bequeathed over 10,000 words to English, which is about three-quarters of which are still used today, including a huge number of abstract nouns ending in the suffixes of age, ants, ins, and, meant, ed, ancient, just to name a few. Also, during this period of time, the University of Cambridge was formed, and it was formed by scholars from Oxford. This scholars they have migrated from Cambridge to Oxford, from Oxford to escape hostile townsmen. During the Middle English period, the rise of new dialects was also a notable event that marked the English language. Because of the vast difference of influential languages, various dialects arose throughout the country, such as Northumbria, West Saxon, Kentish, West Anglican, and East Anglican dialects. Compared to the homogeneous languages of Old English, Middle English gave us much of the English as we know and use today. The There also during this period another event that marked the English language and helped the English language evolve was the Magna Carta that was signed in 1215, where basically King John was forced to sign this Magna Carta to avoid a rebellion. The Magna Carta is the start of the constitutional government in England, and it was the first document that limited the power of the monarchy. This new system is what leads to the foundation of the English Parliament. Texts in the Middle English began to appear in the 13th century with works such as the debated poem The Owl and the Nightingale. and as long as the historical poem known as Laydenburg's Bird. Most of this English literature, it is of unknown authorship. Also, the most famous example of Middle English authors and literature, it is Geoffrey Chaucer, who began writing his famous Canterbury Tales in the early 1380s, and he chose to write this in English. This piece of literature tells us the stories about a group of 30 people who traveled as pilgrims to the Canterbury, England. This portrays the how life was in that time, and it gives us an image of how language and how life was back in that during that day. Now, going on, also some areas of grammar were affected during this English period. Areas such as the construction of progressive forms of verb, as says in I am going, and also the range of more auxiliary verbs such as I have seen, I didn't go, etc. Also, a change was in grammar was the infinitive form of a verb that starts to be marked by the use of a particle, such as to go, to jump. Other areas of language that were also affected during this period were the pronunciation system that has significant changes. Several consonants and vowels alter their values, and new constructive units of sounds emerge, such as the distinction between the F and the B sounds, and also the S and the Z sound. Now, going on into the late modern English period, which is the period that starts in 15,000 until present day era. Now, this late modern English period, it can be divided into two eras: the early modern English period and the late modern English period. Now, starting in the early modern English period, that starts in the 15,000 and ends on the 17,000. These period steps, many steps were taken towards the standardization of English. During this period, there were a lot of changes in politics, economy, technology, and society in Britain. This period saw the effects of the Renaissance in art and literature with a strong influence on the language growth. Many language changes were also a result of social changes that were brought about the Great Plague, and also many new technological and scientific discoveries. During this period, also we can see the great the great bubble shift, and also many works of literature that help shape the English language. We will talk this about in the next slides. Now, the modern English developed after William Caxton established the printing press in in 1476. Now, with the invention of printing, this gave the great impulse to the formation of a standard language and the spread of literacy. In 1611, King James Bible was published, which was influenced by the English speech and writing down to the present day. The Bible and some Bible manuscripts were printed, and the invention of the printing press made books available to more people. The books became cheaper and more people learned to read. Printing also brought a standardization to English. During the Middle English also is also characterized by the beginning of the Great Bubble Shift. This Great Bubble Shift saw a complete change in the way people pronounce English vowels. This was a massive sound change affecting the long vowels of the English. Basically, the long vowels shift upwards. That is, a vowel that used to be pronounced in one place in the mouth will be pronounced in a different place higher up in the mouth. The great vowel shift occurred during the 15th and 18th centuries. With this great vowel shift, the pronunciation of vowels and words started to not be more of a French style. It became more to what it is nowadays. Now, with the Great Plague of 1665, also had a strong impact during the Great English language. Since the mixed of the higher and the lower class of English were mixed, new words were created and were also mixed. Now, in the middle, in this modern period, also saw the creation of the first English dictionary published by Robert Cowdery in 1604. and this definitely helped the push towards the standardization of the English language. Now, also during this period of time, it's the time of Shakespeare's writings. We all know Shakespeare's writings are really influential in the English language and very popular around the world. The Shakespeare's writings that were made during this period of time, the language had become clearly recognized as modern English. There were three big developments in the world at the beginning of this modern English period, which was the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and the British colonization. Shakespeare is one of the biggest influential artists, writers that shaped the English language during this period. During the late modern English period, which starts in 17,000 to present day, the English language underwent more huge changes. The early modern period came to an end as new influences emerged, and also the pronunciation and grammar of early modern English continued into the late modern age. The vocabulary of English grew considerably, leading to the creation of a late modern English. The main changes in the vocabulary during this period were due to industrial revolutions, scientific advancements, colonization, war, and technology. Now, during the as the English Empire spread around the world, new um, and had new colonies, the English words were absorbed into the language. Um, English words were absorbed into the language of the colonized countries, spreading the English language far and wide. Um, England began, Britain was an empire for over 2,000 years between the 18th and the 20th century, and English language continued to change as the British Empire moved across the world to the US, Australia, New Zealand, India, Asia, and Africa. They basically sent people to settle in and live in their conquered places, and as the settlers interact with natives, new words were added to the English vocabulary. An example could be kangaroo and boomerang, which are native Australians. Now, also during the early 18th century, the England began the Industrial Revolution, and this had also an effect on the development of the language, as new words had to be invented or existing ones modified to cope with the rapid changes in technology. New technical words were added to the vocabulary as inventors designed various products and machinery. These words were named after the inventor or given the name of their choice. Some examples of words are trains, engine, pulleys, combustion, electricity, telephone, telegram, camera, just to name a few. Um, Many of the new words that came into the English language during this period were due to the scientific revolution and have a Latin or Greek root. For example, oxygen, nuclear, and vaccine. New words also came from the field of medicine, and as we know, many of these words are still used today. Also, war brought new words into the English vocabulary. In the late modern age, the First and Second World War added many new words and slang phrases that came and were usually used urgently by soldiers and came straight from the trenches. Some of those words were bobby trap, basket case, zigzag, souvenir, just to name a few. Now, during the 1940s, the American political, economic, and military supremacy arose, and borrowing patterns continue. English had a greater impact than ever in other languages, and well, English becomes most widely studied as a second language, and is also used as the scientific lingua franca. Now, starting the 1990s, with the internet begins to change the way people communicate and find out information. English had a huge change. Portable phones, texting, as well as preference began to shift in many places from Britain to American English as the selected standard for a second language acquisition. The twin influences of British and American broadcasting media make the language accessible to more and more people, and Hollywood and the pop music industry help make English an irresistible medium for transition of popular culture. Um, Media and pop culture and helped shape the way English was seen around the world. Also, changes by new waves of immigrants to the U.S. and Great Britain make changes to the language. Linguistic diversity increases where the newcomers settle, and It seems to be that immigrants repeat the pattern of earlier settles and lose their language within a generation or two. The culture at large remains relatively monolingual, but as ever, the language continues to absorb loan words, constantly enriched by the many tongues of the newcomers to these shores. An example here could be the Spanglish that is used in the border between Mexico and the United States. Many words are borrowed from Spanish, and they're used in English context. Now, just to wrap up everything and finish this up, we can say that English continues to change and develop with hundreds of new words arriving every year. But even with all these new borrowings from many other languages, the heart of the English language remains the Anglo-Saxon of the old language. English language will not stop here. It'll keep evolving as time goes on, and many new changes in grammar, pronunciation, and many other things would happily shape a new form of English in the future.